Okay, I've got a RAM combat pistol. Basically, I'm going to just strip this whole pistol down to the core. I'm not going to dwell too much on the early part of the takedown of the pistol because there's plenty of videos for you to watch to just see this process. But I'm going to take the whole core apart once I get the gun apart. So the usual routine, remove the 2 pins, just gently hold the bar, hold the spring at the back and slide the pistol out. There is no CO2 in this one, so I'll take that off there. Okay, I'm going to take the trigger bar, take the spring. We're going to remove this spring before it disappears. Okay, we're going to do the top here. We're going to remove the small Phillips screwdriver, small Phillips screw, sorry. Okay, that's gone. Okay, what we'll do now is forward, remove the core, and then just place that there so that we can lock that forward. But I wouldn't recommend leaving that for any length of time like that. The spring is compressed. It's always better to leave the spring back. Okay, so here we have the core. So we're going to remove everything from the core. So this is going to be a complete dismantling of the core. So the sear spring, push the pin, very simple. I'm going to take away the next piece. This comes attached with the spring. This is quite firm on here, especially as this one is quite a new pistol. So we just need to just flick this off of here. It is slowly coming, but I don't want to. It does just seat on there quite snugly, and it should just move. There we go. Okay, that part's come off. Not quite as easy as I thought. They usually come off very, very easy, but probably most of the ones I've taken off previously have been quite worn. Okay, we're going to remove these 2 O-rings. I'm not overly worried about damaging these 2 O-rings because I'm not going to reuse these. But obviously if you do need to take them off and you want to reuse them, just be very careful, because if you nick them, when the gun does recock, if there's any gaps or air will pass through and then it won't recock, or what will happen is you'll basically cause rough edges, and it's the potential of it just jamming the gun altogether. Next we're going to remove the top section. Now when I take this apart, I'm going to show you the full assembly and disassembly of these components. And I'm going to lay them out exactly as they should go back in. So first part of that's a little bit tight, and then basically just ease it out with your finger. Now here we go. Okay, very simple. Washer, small seal. Now this is the seal in the wind that goes into the windpipe. Windpipe goes into washer and seal. So that order. Okay, spring. Okay, windpipe. And then this is the seal that can cause a lot of problems. This one is actually leaking a small amount from here, and I can see why already, that it is slightly distorted. Basically, the spring will push against here, but the pressure from that spring is very, very little. When the CO2 goes in, it applies a great deal of pressure, which compresses it against here. That then is very difficult to push back, but it cuts the seal. Now, once it's cut itself a nice little groove, it's great, but it can still do damage over a period of time. You don't necessarily need to replace the seal. If it is a small leak, you can just turn it around, and as you can see, that is how it looks when it goes in new. Turn it around and you get two chances with that particular seal. There is a small O-ring on here, a clear O-ring, if you can just see there. And like I said, I'll show you the whole assembly, and that is how it would go back together. The spring is slightly tapered, so you put the narrow part of the spring there, and that is how it should look. Okay, back in there. So that is the top of the launch compartment, completely finished. This will come off as well. Once again, like I said, this is quite a new one, so some of these parts like to stay on, but there we go, that's off. Okay, so now we have, I just need a screwdriver for this and an Allen key for the velocity. Now I'm going to mark, in fact I'm not going to mark this actually because I'm going to change the whole core. So normally I mark the core when I remove the velocity. This helps me, if I'm going to rebuild the core and put the same components back in the same core, it just helps me remember roughly the velocity adjustment. Okay, here you can see we've got the velocity inside here. Now it's just a drum. Now to remove this, we need a bolt. But first of all, we have to remove the back of the core. So I'm just going to get a screwdriver for that. Okay, so we have the screwdriver here. So it's just a plain headed screwdriver. That seal, as you can see, has gone. Fragments of the seal are coming out. So that seal was leaking a touch as well, so that would explain that. I will be replacing all the seals on this particular core. Yeah, as you can see, it's just slightly there, but that shouldn't cause. Now you need to make sure when you replace this that you do leave those 4 holes clear, because the air goes in through here and then goes out through the holes. Sorry, it's dispersed through the core here. So blocking those holes will give you problems. Okay, now we get into the sealing pin. So once again, we need a screwdriver for that. We just need a small screwdriver. Probably can actually just use that one still. There you go. So we just undo that. Now that's actually attached to the velocity itself. So we just tap that out. Okay, so that's your sealing pin. Okay, now we need to remove this drum. So first of all, we'll actually remove that as well while we're here. Okay, once again, this has a small seal as well. And this particularly small seal is important as well because it has 4 holes as well that you shouldn't block. So let's just have a look at that. I can see that's not the standard O-ring for this. So that's obviously been a problem in the past. But this one's usually a lot better. So anyway, the 4 holes are all clear there anyway. There's no debris, there's no nothing. The core looks clean inside, as you can see. So you can see the hole there that would feed to the top of the core there. And then there's a hole here which goes to the back of this drum. So now we need to remove this. Now what you mustn't do is poke anything in here, because if you push something in there, that yellow seal needs to be perfectly round. And there's a thread in here, so I could push really hard here and it would come out, but that sealing pin needs to screw back in there, so we mustn't damage that. So that's important. Okay, so what I'm going to do next anyway is I'm going to get the bolt and remove that. There we are. So as you can see, it's a 10mm bolt, and basically screw it in here, and then there you go. Okay, now as you can see, I had to apply quite a lot of pressure. So if you push something through the other side, you can imagine the damage you do. So now we unscrew that from the bolt and put that in there. Now the core is virtually empty. Okay, next, remove the valve. Okay, I have a tool here I've actually adapted. They are a very thin pair of long nose pliers, and what I've done is I've just filed them down to actually do some of these jobs. Okay, as you can see, I can undo the valve. Once again, all these parts don't need to be overly tightened. There you go. Okay. Okay, that's actually, there's an O-ring in there. Okay, this one has actually been opened, and I don't believe that's actually the right way around. So the flat side should go to the ceiling pin. Also, on a lot of the newer models, that's not a standard O-ring. There isn't actually an O-ring in here. Although in some of the diagrams I've noticed there are some O-rings, but that's strange because that's not a standard O-ring. And that seal is definitely the wrong way around. Okay, so that's the core empty. And now we're going to remove the air intake or the CO2 inlet. Now this is where you screw the bottle into, and I've noticed that some people are having problems with the actual pin itself. They're either getting damaged. So this is important because this is a very easy fix. Half a turn more and then okay, and then we take that out. Okay. Okay, now you get to that stage, then we remove this seal. Now we're not going to keep this seal, so I'm not overly worried about damaging this. As you can see, there's not anything particularly wrong with it, it just needs to be replaced. Okay, now as you can see, now this has two little holes. This particular one isn't damaged at all, so I can't really show you any damage as such, but I'm going to place this long nose tool in here. Just be a little bit careful with this because the threads on this are quite fragile and there aren't many threads on it. Can be fiddly to get into. But once again, it's not overly tight, so when refitting the pistol, none of the seals need to be overly tightened. Another half turn and it should just fall out. He says, but it doesn't. There you go. Okay, right, so that's fine. Okay, under here we should have an O-ring in the bottom, which I can see we do. Now that definitely needs replacing because that's certainly flattened completely. So that would indicate to me that someone's over tightened this as well. But anyway, and that's it. The core is now empty. Basically, when I get a replacement core, as this one does have a fault, I will show you the whole pistol being reassembled. Okay, that's all.